All right, 7 minutes out after the hour, let's bring in House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who sent a letter to the President Biden to do something about the border and this immigration crisis. It is a crisis. Leader McCarthy, welcome. Do you expect to get any response, or is this like spitting in the wind?
I hope to get a response, and we won't shut up. I mean, I've listened to this president say he's been in office for more than 40 years, but they never can prove one time that he's even been to the border. More than 2/3 of the Republicans in Congress have been to the border just this year. So we'd like to sit down with him if he's too busy to get there, because the challenge is what is happening. It's making every city in America a border city. Fentanyl has increased by more than 300%, killing Americans. You watch the cartels, where I just had a roundtable just last week with mayors from these cities down there. They've had to close their schools 42 different days just this year because of the crime that came across in the high-speed chases. And now what we're finding, we are catching people on the terrorist watch list. So this is not just Central America, more than 150 other countries. We have caught people that came from Yemen, not on the same day, but on different days. Why are they coming to America? Who are they working with? And what do they have planned? This is about the security of our country. And the president says he is too busy to deal with it. We'd like to sit down with him, talk about the facts, and solve this problem once and for all.
When we saw these images yesterday, we were all just floored because thousands of them are heading toward our border. It's a huge crowd. Some were in wheelchairs, some kids were in strollers, families coming up. I know many of Republicans are worried about mass amnesty, these alarming numbers, and then we saw thousands of them busting through the Mexico National Guard. Are we worried that's going to happen when they come to America?
Well, if they won't abide by the law enforcement there, why do we think they'd abide by it in America? America, one of the greatest strengths we have is the rule of law. We believe in a legal immigration system. Right. But when you break society down and you break over the law, that creates a tremendous amount of problems in our country. And this president is ignoring it. Remember, this isn't the first time a caravan's coming. This isn't the first time he's been warned ahead of time. And then he lied to America that he was sending people back home. No, in the dead of night, he sent them around the country. Right. And remember, we're in the middle of COVID as well, with no one's being tested.
Absolutely, and they're letting all those thousands of people in, and at the same time, Leader McCarthy, so they're letting thousands of people into our country, but at the same time, with these government mandates on vaccines, they're firing cops and firefighters left and right, but they're letting these people in. And also yesterday, the news was that if you're from a country, there are 50 different countries, where the vaccination rate is like less than 10%, the federal government says, if you've got a compelling reason, we're going to let you in because we want to restart this international travel thing. It seems like there's a double standard for international people and for people who work here.
I don't understand. These first responders were our heroes last year that worked in there when there wasn't a vaccine. Now you want to fire them and allow other people into the country illegally who could have COVID and spread it throughout the country by not even telling the mayors of those cities that you're bringing them into your city. This is what's wrong and backwards. And if the president does not have time to go understand what's happening along the border, us who have been there would love to sit down with them, to work together to solve this problem. That's what our government is designed to do, to find the compromise. We spent our time there. We understand it. Let's bring the border agents who watch this every day, who have been pushed beyond means about what they've had to work through, and let them explain what's going on.
But Leader McCarthy, he has no interest in solving this problem. That's the issue. It's not that you have different views. One leaves the door open, and one is trying to strategize to organize who comes in and out. And they're leaving the door open, and they're ignoring it. So I think the whole thing is fruitless until you guys find a way to get back the House and the White House. Meanwhile, let's talk about what's happening. Because you lost the House and the Senate and the White House, Nancy Pelosi has an agenda, and the Democrats, social spending through the roof. And even though they're having trouble with their own caucus, they look like they're going to get something across to the tune of between $1.5 and $2 trillion. And the reason why they're struggling, according to the Speaker, it's because the media is not selling their plan. Remember this last week.
Latest CBS News poll shows that only about 10% of Americans describe themselves as knowing a lot of specific things that are in the reconciliation package, and that the majority don't know anything at all. So do you think you need to do a better job at messaging, and going forward, how do you sell this?
Well, I think you all could do a better job of selling it, to be very frank with you, because every time I come here, I go through the list. It's hard to break through when you have such a comprehensive package.
Right, so it's the media's fault. So CNN realized they were wrong, so they quickly changed it, and they have now an article on CNN.com, Get Up to Speed, how the spending bill would change your life. So they're helping out. They finally got on the same page. Wouldn't you love to have a compliant media like that?
I would love that. But remember what's in this bill. $200 million for a park in Pelosi's district. You know, she's on her farewell tour.
Right.
Every month she's in Europe, and she comes back. In this bill is also amnesty for about 10 million illegal immigrants that you watch coming across this border.
Won't the parliamentarians strike that down?
I don't know if they will or not, but it's in the Democrat bill today that they want to pass inside the House. Remember what the American public is saying, just in a recent poll, that we are on the wrong direction. The top two issues was inflation. And why is inflation here? Because of the spending of what the Democrats have done, the trillions of dollars. You watch what they're doing every day. You watch on your news, the supply chain, the most expensive Thanksgiving we've ever had. The price of gas, even in one place in California, is over $7. Our shelves, when we go into our stores, you don't believe it's America, where we do not have, our shelves have become empty. It's based upon the Democratic policies. And their second top issue was the immigration and our border. The Democrats are headed in the wrong direction. But it's not just the price of the bill, it's the provisions that are in it. Don't get hung up that, oh, it's less money. It's not less money. All the Democrats are saying is they won't fund it as many years, but it will still be a program that gets funded by government that will break us in the system.
Leader McCarthy, the Democrats now are talking about, to pay for it, they would have like a trillionaire tax or something like that.
Billionaire.
Trillionaire, ultimately. It's going to involve about 700 people. But what they're doing is, a lot of people are saying it can't possibly be constitutional, because what they're saying is we're going to tax you on unrealized capital gains. If you haven't sold it, it's not income. And if you have a bad year, is the federal government going to give you that money back if you're a trillionaire the next year?
No. Remember, it's not just people out there that are saying it's illegal. Even the Democratic chairman of Ways and Means said he looked at it and it's been illegal. Remember what the socialist countries in Europe have done. They imposed a wealth tax, and France, Germany, and Sweden pulled it back because they realized it doesn't work. Remember, America has tried this before, alternative minimum tax, that only went in with a handful of Americans had to pay it, the wealthiest. And what happened as years progressed? Millions of those in the middle class had to pay for it. Remember what else is in this bill? 85,000 IRS agents. And remember, they say it's going after the wealthy, but if you spend or make $28 a day, they're going after you. And you know what the number 85,000 is? That's larger than the population of Scranton, Pennsylvania, the hometown of this president. And what are they going to spend their time on? Going after you. And don't think, oh, I'm not a millionaire, they won't come after me. Yes, they are. If you spend $28 a day, they're coming after you, and they're valuing what you have, the IRS. And we know it's an incentive for them to make the value higher just to tax you, whether you sell it or not, or whatever the value is. That is not the America we believe in. That is not the American that the Constitution says. That's why we are fighting, and we need people to join with us, because we only need 4 Democrats to say no to stop this.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.